guys, welcome to part 8 of our library management system. So now let's look at the library management.cpp file, which is one of our implementation files. We'll go into File, New, File, C++ source, go, click on Next. It's already on C++, click on Next. We're calling this one the library manage. When we click on these 2 dots here, it's still going to save under our library management system. So we save, select all, and we finish. So now, this is the implementation file for the library management class we did earlier in one of our videos. This file contains the actual logic for managing the library collection. It handles adding, searching, borrowing, returning, and saving or loading data. So we start off with our include, our library manager. So library manager header file, if you remember. This was our class declaration file. And also include the fstream. And this is fstream for file input output. It is for reading and writing into files, as we will see when we go to the program. We also include the ststream. The estimate for streams is we're going to passing on strings, like from string to integer and so forth. This is the library we use. And also include IO stream. This is our famous one, IO stream. Include IO stream for console input output, like cout. Okay, so let's start off with our constructor, which is the library manager. So we start off with our constructor, the library manager. The purpose, it creates a new library manager object. So what it does is it automatically loads existing library data from file when program starts, and this is called when the library manager is declared in our main method. This ensures that when you run the program, you see previously added books or magazines. So we're going to have library manager. I'm going to call library manager. And it's going to load data. So this line 7 load data, it is the call function to read save data from a library data.txt. If you remember our text file, the library data text file. So this line will be the call function to read all the saved data. Since we just had our constructor, we need a destructor. So a destructor, the first thing we do, we must add a tilde first before the name of the destructor, and then to have the exact name as the constructor. The purpose, it cleans up when library manager object is destroyed. So what it does, it automatically saves all library data to file when the program ends, and it is called when the program exits or object goes out of scope. This ensures that any changes made during the session are permanently saved. So we have the library manager. I'm going to add a tilde first, then library. Library manager. Save. save date. This is the call. Wait, yeah, this is the call function to write current data to library data text file. Okay, so next we're going to have our add item method. The purpose, it adds a new item, whether the book or magazine, to the library collection. The parameters will have this item, a unique pointer to a library item, which automatically manages memory. So why are we going to use the standard unique point? It automatically deletes the object when no longer needed. And then why this standard move? It transfers ownership of the pointer from caller to the vect. So this new method is an entertaining method, so it's void library manager. We name this one the add item. So we're going to have a unique pointer, so std unique. It's the unique pointer. The library item. So it should be outside. Item. So we're going to have this this function items dot pushback. With the parameter standard move item. Okay, so now let me just explain this line 13. It will move the item into a vector, but then you must know that the save data function is not called here. It's only called in the destructor. This is more efficient. It saves more at program end and instead of after every add. And then we're going to have the search item method next. So the purpose of the search item method, it finds an item in the library by its unique ID. The parameters will be the ID. This is the unique identifier to search for. Then it returns a pointer to the item if found, and then null if it's not found. It will have a const at the end. This method does not modify the library collection. So we're going to have a library item, put an access status to show it's a pointer, and library item, so the library manager, for our search item with the const parameter const std string reference id const. So this is so next we're going to have the range-based for loop. This is going to loop through every item in the vector. We're going to have something called a const auto reference, and that means it's a read-only reference for each item. There's no copying and no modifying. So for our range-based for loop, it is for const, we use the auto reference, so the reference items. So next we want to check if current items ID matches the search ID. So when it goes through the program, so I'm going to have an if item. Then we're going to have if item get ID method, get ID method. Then it's just going to be equal the ID. Remember, if it's a table concerns it's not an assignment of parts, but it is equal. So it's going to be the ID, and it will return the item dot get. So what line 18 means, it means it's going to return the raw pointer to the found item. That's what it's going to return. But then if it's not found, it's just going to return the null pointer. So it's return null point. It means if the item is not found in the library, it's going to return a null point. That's what line 21 means. So let's go to now to our borrow item method. For the borrow item method, the purpose, it marks an item as borrowed or checked out. The parameters again will be the ID of the item to borrow. It returns true if successfully borrowed, false if an object like a book or a magazine is already borrowed, or if it doesn't exist. So we just have some basic business rules. It can only borrow if item exists and is not already borrowed, and it cannot borrow an item already borrowed to prevent double borrowing. So for this borrow item method, since there are only two outcomes, it's going to be a boolean. So it's a bool from the library. It's a library manager. It's the borrow item with parameters const std string reference id. So the parameter is the id. With the library item pointer, master item, then we assign it search item id, search item using the id. So this is the first find this line is to first find the item. So now let's look at what we shall do to check if item exists and if item is not already borrowed. We will have an if statement, and if now I want to check if it exists or doesn't. Let me just put a space so we can see clearly. If the item and the item it's not okay, to say item is not borrowed, we say item, and it points to our function, the get borrowed function status. We're just checking if there's no double borrowing. So what happens within our if statement? To mark it as borrowed, it's item set borrow status to true. So we're gonna set it to true if it's already borrowed. Then it returns true. Return true. Okay. This is the first condition for our if statement. If this is not true, then it will return false. So what this line return false means the item is already borrowed or doesn't exist in the library. So now let's look when we return the item, the return item method. The purpose it marks an item as returned to check back into the library. The parameters again we use. I remember to borrow we used the ID, so to return we'll use the same ID. Since the ID is the unique, so it's going to return true if it's successfully returned, and then false if it wasn't borrowed or doesn't exist. Again, the business rules, you can only return if item exists and is currently borrowed. You cannot return an item that's already available in the library. So even for a return function, it is a boolean since it only has two outcomes, so it's called library manager return item with parameters const std string reference id. So library item pattern is search item function. If you remember our search function, we will be using id to search our item. In this line, therefore, we still want to find our item in the library. So now to check if the item exists and is currently borrowed. Okay, you want to check if it exists and it is currently borrowed. We're going to have an if statement. So if the item exists and item we call on our get borrowed function, get borrowed status. Then what happens if this condition is true? Item we're going to point it to set borrowed set. Set borrowed status as for we're going to set the borrowed status as false. So it's going to mark the book as available. So you need to set the item to borrowed false. It means that the book will be available. So it's going to return true. Otherwise, we only have two outcomes. If the item doesn't exist or wasn't borrowed, we're going to have a false. So outside of our if, we're just going to return false. So that is how we're going to search the item. So to display all items, let's move on to the next method to display all items in our library. The purpose, okay, we're going to call it on the display all items. The purpose it prints all items in the library to the console in a formatted way. This method, and we're going to use a const to make sure this method does not modify the library collection. So to display all items, we're going to have, let me just scroll up. I have a void library manager display all items. So it's a const within our function to check if label is empty. This is how we check. We have an if statement. If item, we're going to call our empty function empty, or the empty method. We'll have an std cout. Well, we want to display a message if it's empty. It's std cout. Put our quotation mark. No item in the label. Let's just say no. No item in the label. So the user will be able to see that there's no item. Then we're going to want to move to the next line. It stores our function and it's going to return. It's going to return nothing since it's a non-returning method. So we'll return, we're not going to return anything. We're just going to exit early since they've been nothing to display. And then to display the header. To display the header, we will have an std cout. First we'll move on to a new line and then library items. Now I want to display the library items if they are available, the ones which should be available. Library items. Let's also move to a new line again. Okay, just for format reasons, let's just underline. Let's do this out. We just want to underline so everything will be neat. Then we move on to a new line. So now we're going to loop through each item and call its display info method. So we're going to also go to polymorphism in action because the display info function behaves directly for it displays exactly the same different. It behaves differently for both book and magazine. So let's have our for loop for const auto reference items so it's item display info. So this is a virtual function call. I'm going to close and then std cout. Again, let's underline here. Now let's move on to our next function, the load data function. So the load data function purpose it reads saved the label data from file and rebuilds the collection. It is called by the constructor when the program starts. As you will see, the format we're going to use, and we're going to pass using a special character. Okay, now let's look at the load data method. The purpose of this method, it returns, so it reads saved label data from the file and rebuilds the collection. It is called by the constructor when the program starts. So as you're going to see our format, you'll be using a special separator. So now let's have let me just move here. Okay, it's a void airport manager. We'll call this one load data. So now to open the file for reading, we'll have to open our file std if stream data file. So our data file in this case is the library data text file we did in our previous videos. So if the file cannot be opened or that doesn't exist, we're just going to have a return. This is normal for the first run, since there will be no data to load in the first run, but as it goes on, so have an if not file. So if not file, what this time means that if the file cannot be opened, what is open, this is the method we use to open the file. That's why line. So it should be, if the file cannot be opened, we're just going to return nothing, as I've just explained. Just going to return. Usually in our first one, this is going to happen. So now let's look at a scenario where the file does open. So let's have a string std string, and then we call it line. Let's just give it a name line. So this to read the file line by line until the end of the file, we're going to use a while loop. So because we're going to go through the file, so we're going to have a while std get line. Our parameters will be the file and the line. So for our while loop, okay, so within our while loop, to create a stream to pass the line, we're going to have an std is stream stream. This ISS, it means the is stream with the parameter line. And for the variables to store the past data, we're going to have to pass each variable using our special character. So we're going to have an std get line is string. We start with the type, whether it's a book or a magazine. And then we're going to use this separator. It's just it separates the line. So what line 64 does is trace the type, whether it's a magazine or a book. Then STD string ISS is for string ISS. Now we look at the title. Okay, now special character. So this line is to read the title of the book or magazine. STD string. Also here I forgot to put this is a function. So our function get line. This is our method, the get line method. So let's see the string get line method. The parameter is string. Now we're looking for the author. This is how we're going to read the author with our special character. Remember to close our code at the end. STD string get line ISS the ID to read our ID. This line is to read our ID. Then we have an STD string sorry guys, why am I using it? It should be STD get line. We're calling our functions using those strings. Sorry. So STD, and then we call the function get line. STD get line standard get line get line. So we're going to have ISS extra info with our separator. So this is to get the extra info for the genre or the issue, since it could be a magazine, it could be a book. We're not going to have an is string where our input is borrowed. So what line 69 will do is we're going to read borrow status, whether it's true or false, whether the book is available or whether it's borrowed. So now we want to create the appropriate object based on type. And to do that, we're going to have an if statement. If the type we equated to, if the type is equal to book, so it means that if the type is a book, what happens then? If the type is a book, we're going to have a subtractor. So in this case, I'm going to make an as a subtractor. So what the subtractor will do is going to remove the genre. So the first I'm going to have a subtractor 7, since there are 7. Okay, this should have been within double quotation marks there. So we're going to have a subtractor 7 to remove the genre or the genre or the issue. So what it is going to remove the seven characters. They then going to convert it to an integer. Okay, let me just explain again. We're going to have a subtractor now, which is first of all we're going to start off with the book and then the magazine. For the book, the subtractor is going to remove the word gender, and it's just going to keep the gender of the book. So if it's a science fiction book, it's just going to display science fiction instead of saying gender, science fiction. So to do that, we're going to have an if, and then we have an item. We'll call our pushback function push back. It's an std. We'll make unique. We have the make. We'll have the make unique for the book. Now we're still focusing on the book. Where is the title? The author, the ID, extra info. Then we said we're going to have the subtractor here. The subtractor function is subtract. So let's make it 7. Since the gender in the space, we're going to have subtract 7. I'm just counting here okay, yeah, let's close our code. Else, so since this is an if else if is our second condition. Else if the type we're working on now is no longer book, if the type is equal to magazine. So now the first part was for the book. Now if the type is a magazine, what happens then in this case? Magazine. If the type is a magazine, we're also going to have the subtractor like in the book. 7 characters to be subtracted, but then we're also going to call a function called an s2i, which is converts a string to an integer. As you recall, we said earlier, for magazines the issue number is an ID, is an integer. So we're going to have an int issue, then we assign it std. Here's our function s2i, which converts the string to an integer. I call it the extra info function, extra info dot subtract seven special characters. So it's seven characters will be subtracted. Then this item pushback, and this std make unique. Make unique for this is only unique for the magazine. The first part is only unique for the book. Make unique magazine. Which is the title, author, ID, issue, close our else part. So now to restore the product status from file, we're going to have items dot back. With the back function, it's going to point to the set borrowed status with parameter is borrowed. Yeah, now we're done with our file. So to close the file, we're going to call our close function for file dot close. This is our close method. It always closes the file when you're done. So now let's look into our save data method next. For the save data method, the purpose is to write or label data to file for permanent storage. It is called by this structure when the program ends. So the file format is like the reverse of loading. Again, we're going to use a special separator between the fields. The getter function will return the book or magazine. To get extra info, returns the formatted string like genre or the issue number. The borrow status stores as 0 available or 1 as borrowed. So now let's go into our library manager. Let's look at this function void library manager. I'm going to call this one to save data function. So to open the file for writing, what do you want to create or overwrite a file is std. We call it on our open function, so it's of stream file, and it's a data file. This is how we open our file. Okay, if file can be opened, maybe there are permission issues, we just want to exit. So if the file cannot be opened, we want to exit. So it's if file does not open, so file not open dot is open file. Okay, this is open method. We just want to return, since it cannot be opened, we just want to it must be outside the brackets. Just want to return. Okay, but then if the file can open, what do we want to do next? We want to write each item to the file. So we're going to have a for loop to write each item to the file. So it's for const auto reference items. So the file this is just the format for our file. We start off with item, we're calling our get type method get type. This is the type for the book or magazine. I just want this all done for format reasons. get item, get, we call it now the get title method, and it's going to give us the title. Item, get the author. What's happening here? This is a function, shouldn't be. Yeah, it's okay. Now we're calling our get author method. You can separate it by this special character. And its item. Get ID. Method to get ID separated by a special character, and then its item, get extra info. To get the genre or the issue, whether it's a magazine or the book. It's going to depend if it's a magazine or the book. And next we're going to have the item, get borrow status. We call it now get borrow status method status. Okay, now we have to move to a new line first. So the get borrowed is to just display whether it's available or it's already borrowed. Now remember, every time we're working on a file, we must remember to close the file. So file dot close method. I want to close the file now. So yeah, so guys, that's part 8 of our library management system. This is the library manager, the CPP. So now in our next video, part 9, we're going to work on our main method. So please like this video, share, subscribe to this channel, and thank you. Bye. See you in the next video.